Welcome to the Cowpark Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co-host, Jason, calling in for the Batcave in Indianapolis. Jason, how are you, my good man?
I'm good, man. It's the week of Christmas, so of course that's been the main focus of everyone. Of course, I still have shopping to do, but that's what it is. That's what I do every year, so I don't mind it. I look forward to the challenge, just like the challenge of working with you every week doing this show. So here we go.
Yes, we know that there is an uphill climb for you in that endeavor.
Which one? Which
Thank
one?
you. Thank you for listening. This is episode 36 of the Cowpark Bros podcast. For the uninitiated, this is Cowpark Bros is the podcast to hear. We are a weekly podcast for fans of culture, current events, sports, life, and entertainment.
And of course, and as always, we're your hosts, Terrence and Jason. And every single Thursday, we bring to you a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and athletes we love.
And even some of the athletes we loathe. No matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
And folks, never forget this. But for more Cowpark Bros content, make sure you connect with us on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, under the handle Cowpark Bros or Cowpark Bros Podcast for more behind the scenes of the Cowpark Bros show and just to engage with us every single day. But also, can't forget this. The Cowpark Bros Podcast is available to listen and subscribe for free wherever you listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, if you like us, hell, why wouldn't you?
Exactly, folks. Like Terrence said earlier, we are the podcast to hear and watch. So make sure when it comes to that, you live it, love it, and most importantly, do it.
All right. Jason, first thing we were going to be talking about the fact that, you mentioned the fact that we're in the throes of a holiday schedule, and there's going to be some changes to the schedule, not just for ourselves personally and professionally, but also for some of the sports leagues in America, and not just America, the globe. You referenced an article from Stephanie Winger at People. The NFL and NBA changed league COVID protocols amid surge in player cases. More than 100 NFL players, including quarterback Baker Mayfield and wide receiver Odell Beckham, were placed on the reserve COVID-19 list this week, according to CBS Sports. And the article goes further. It said the NFL and NBA announced new stricter COVID-19 protocols following an outbreak among players in both professional sports leagues this week. NFL plans to implement preventative measures that have proven effective. Masking regardless of vaccination status, remote or outdoor meetings, eliminating in-person meals, and no outside visitors while on team travel, the league said in a statement on Thursday. We will continue to strongly encourage the booster shots as the most effective protection. Finally, and based on expert advice, we will adjust the return of participation requirements for those who have recovered from COVID-19, the memo stated. That same day, Baker Mayfield blasted the National Football League on Twitter over its handling of the crisis. He proceeds to @NFL, make up your damn mind on protocols, he tweeted Thursday. Okay. There's a lot going on, dog. And we're just talking about NFL and NBA based off this update. Jason, what are your thoughts as two of the major sports leagues make a shift in how they handle COVID protocols with Omicron on the rise?
Well, like you said, we're not talking about it. You might as well make that 3, not 2, because the NHL is in the same boat.
NHL's in a different boat.
True,
actually.
True.
But I want to hit the pause on that real quick. I just want to know what you thought about the NFL and the NBA changing league protocols, and then we can get into the NHL.
Yeah, I'll just bring that up as like an addendum, because I agree with you. It is a different boat. But with the NFL and the NBA, well, first off, with Baker Mayfield, I really hadn't been following that. I didn't know he was really doing all that stuff with the NFL. I don't know what he expects them to do when it comes to making up their mind. It seems like they've kind of done it. But I will say this: that article from People mentioned over 100 people 100 athletes or whatnot have been put in the NFL's health and safety protocols. Well, that number's gone up since that article. So at the start of this week, start of last week, the number's above 213 people. Yes, 213. 51 since Monday, or rather on Monday, and 21 today. So now I wasn't able to find any numbers when it comes to whether it's from Delta or Omicron. I did find some from the NBA. But as far as the NFL goes, yeah, they have a big problem. And if you remember way back when the season started, actually before the season started, when the NFL announced what they were going to do for protocol to make sure the season's going, we talked about the end of the season, and I mentioned what the NFL is going to do when somebody has, comes to the point of canceling a game because they can't get it in during that given week. Because the NFL said that we're going to play all our scheduled games within the time frame. If you can't do that, then it's going to be forfeits. And my thought was, if that happens, how's that going to affect teams that might be in a playoff race? Well, this past week that just ended, as far as the NFL schedule week, they had to reschedule 3 games. In fact, today's Tuesday. There were 2 games, at least 2 games, or 1 game played today. I think 2 yesterday.
It's 2 games played today.
It is 2 games today. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
So there you go. So, and all 3 of these games that got rescheduled involves at least one team that's currently in the playoff race. Now, they're going to get the games in obviously this week, but what's going to happen next week? Week after that, still 3 weeks left in the season, including this one, and the game's on Sunday. Some of those games may be affected too. So, and again, fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Because I hate to have somebody lose out on the playoffs or get a loss, or something like that, or anything that happens in the playoffs. Knock on wood for that too. But the one thing that kind of troubled me a little bit with the NFL is that, and I know why, but they decided to not test unvaccinated players, or rather vaccinated players who are not showing symptoms. And I know why they're doing that, and I get it. But at the same time, I still think that's still problematic because they're trying to save time and try to keep people in the field. But if those people can still spread it around, that's not really helping things. So, yeah, my opinion on that, I think you know that. I'm not going to go deep into that, but that's my opinion on the NFL. Now, the NBA, in some regard, may be a little worse because from what I was reading, they don't seem to have any plans on changing the testing protocols for any of their players. Although notably, like you said, they've also had several outbreaks as well. Most notably, the Chicago Bulls.
Right.
I think up to this point, they have like 10 total players that have been in the COVID health and safety protocols. According to the article I found, which was CBSSports.com, there are 6 current Bulls in the health and safety protocols. The Nets actually have 10 people currently on it. So go figure that. But the big thing the NBA did do was they allow for teams to have more replacement players to help fill out the rosters, because if there's some teams out there that only were able to have 7 people dressed for the game. So go figure that. I'm sure the Bulls are in that problem too. So, to be honest with you, man, some of the stuff they are doing, okay, but the rest of it I don't understand. It doesn't seem like it's really a wise decision when it comes to the actual health and safety of people. You know what I mean? It seems like they're doing what's best to get players on the court or field so they can have the games, but what they're doing in the true health and safety of the actual players, even though they're in the health and safety protocols.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out why, Jason, why you feel that instituting these protocols isn't necessarily the same as indicating this is in the vein of player safety.
Well, as I just said, the NBA, from the article I just read, less than an hour ago, they don't plan on changing either testing measures in regards to increasing testing or anything like that for anybody. The NFL is actually taking testing away from people just because they're vaccinated and don't show any symptoms. Okay. So that's what I mean by that.
So, what does that tell you about COVID then?
About COVID doesn't tell me anything.
I think that
It's
tells me that it's everywhere, and vaccinated or not, there is an opportunity for you to one get it and to transmit it. And also, I think your point about hey, they don't want to disrupt games from being played. I mean, the National Football League and the National Basketball Association probably two of the best examples in saying, "Hey, man, we getting these games in no matter what."
Yeah, and that's what. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So I didn't about that information there. It doesn't tell me anything about COVID. It tells me more, like you said, about the NBA, NFL trying to get these games in. And obviously, we can break that down as to why they want to do that. For those of you not watching yet, it's the almighty dollar. So
Oh, jeez, yeah, yeah. The our ambassador of Quan here. I mean, you right. This is absolutely about ensuring that this $4 billion industry that they get these games in. That that is that that is absolutely what's happening. Are they are they enabling transmission to the extent that perhaps someone like an Aaron Rodgers was doing it? Probably not. But they are absolutely saying there is an acceptable level of of transmission. So, Jason, what do you got?
you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, and as much as I dislike Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how he fits in the whole comparison here.
He fits in comparison because basically he was lying about his vaccination
To
status
who?
to all of us when he indicated he was vaccinated.
Well. Okay, so let me step back a little bit because from my and we talked about this from everything we discussed and talked about researching that he actually never said he was vaccinated to anybody.
He
Even articles we read said the Packers were already aware of the fact the entire time he wasn't vaccinated. He just told the
right,
media
right.
he was immunized, which again,
Yeah, yeah. Again, yeah, but that's bullshit though. What I'm saying is that the league knows that you can recommend, you can encourage. No one is going to do what they're supposed to do 100% of the time.
facts.
And so our best hope to one get through this as a society is to say, okay, let's actually put these organizations and these leagues in a position where they can actually get through a game or a week of games or the season. I mean, there's no way in hell that we're in a worse position now with vaccinations, with vaccination boosters and protocols, and also your like I remember 2 years ago, dog. You had LeBron celebrating in a bubble. Okay, to me, we're a long way from that
For now.
for now. Yes, but also we will be back there if things don't change. And I think that the biggest component of that is people feeling like, oh, well, since it doesn't affect me or I'm not, sick or what have you, I don't have to worry about it. Um, and I bring up Aaron Rodgers because basically, had he played this as if he was Kyrie Irving and said that, yeah, I'm not ready yet to get vaccinated. People kind of that let that go. There wasn't nearly as much judgment um, towards Kyrie Irving as there was Aaron Rodgers, to me. Um, but what I'm going to say is we're also going to be dealing with the fact that it also depends on how big the outbreak is. I mean, if if the if the Chicago Bulls have so many have failed to keep COVID at bay, like it's bad when your play by play announcer team locally is on the COVID list, right? So I think number one, I think there's too much money on the table for them to put a pause on this, a real pause. And then number two, I don't think society is equipped to go back on pause. I mean, I've I know that the National Football League and the National Basketball Association, they're not even the only two leagues that are doing this, that are adapting. You should adapt when provided with a new scenario or new information. Not a sign of character when you're just so stubborn as either an individual or as an organization. Like, yeah, we were provided new information, but we're not going to change anything. That doesn't reflect good leadership. Jason, thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I mean, obviously stuff like this, yeah. Even though well, at least I've been saying this though for a long time on the show, and to anybody that knows me, and not that people aren't aware of this, but I think this is a solid reminder of the fact that even though you're vaccinated, you can still get this, COVID-19. You can still spread COVID-19 as well. The NFL and NBA both have high numbers of players being vaccinated. I believe both of them are above 90, maybe above 95%. But yet, both dealing with outbreaks. NHL's in the same boat as far as those numbers. So I think this is a great reminder for people that yes, you can still get it and spread it, and that's it. Everything else you want to throw in there doesn't really matter. Okay. Two, you mentioned not going back into the whole bubble type mentality, stuff like that. When when Brown was celebrating, I think that I don't think we're going to go back there because I think the fact that we do have in general society a generally high vaccination rate, which is still going up by the way. I think that's going to be used as an excuse potentially. And this is all opinion, folks. I obviously don't have inside information into the government, but I think that's going to be used for people to avoid having to go back into the bubble type mentality. You know what I mean? Now, potentially, there could be certain things we go back to without going full back to bubble. We could see potentially arenas going back to limited fans, whatnot. But again, that's speculation. Um, those are my thoughts there. I agree with you. There's a lot of money on the table for well, not for me and you, unfortunately, but for NFL and NBA leagues. And I do think that's very unfortunate in this case that they're putting money over the health and safety protocols of their players, and probably more case to the NBA and their arenas, their fans too. So obviously the fans are there by choice, but still, you know.
And I know, Jason, you mentioned the National Hockey League. Number one, their outbreaks are so rampant at this point that they've effectively decided to put a pause on the NHL season.
That is definitely a very different boat currently compared to the NBA and NFL. In the same article I found from ESPN, Adam Silver said that there's no plans as of right now, of course, to put a pause on the NBA season. Which I don't. It's interesting because obviously the NBA and the NHL are very closely related together when it comes to their schedules. As far as the arenas they play in are a lot of the same. But it's funny that the NHL decided to do that, put their pause in their season, but the NBA, as of right now, hasn't decided to do that yet. I find that quite interesting. Now,
Why do
obviously,
you find it interesting?
well, because so obviously it's two different commissioners of the league. So obviously they're going to have two different values, or I shouldn't say values, two different perspectives of how to handle their league. Bettman, like I said, decided to pause the season, and you would think potentially, like I just said, because their seasons are so mirrored together, that you would think that Adam Silver would at least be considering doing the same thing, and maybe he is, but publicly hasn't said it. Now, obviously, well, I don't have NHL numbers when it comes to the outbreaks, when it comes to numbers and how much more outbreaky, they that's not a word, folks, I know, but how much worse they are than the NBA. I mean, I know the NBA as of right now has 80 plus players in their health and safety protocols. So, how much more does that number need? Now, I'm not saying the NBA should pause their season. I'm just saying that's very interesting that those two leagues that mirror each other when it comes to a lot of different things, one put the pause on it, the other one, as of right now, has not. So, I am very interested from the other perspective of okay, as of this article, which was from yesterday, Silver says he's not going to change anything. I wonder what it would take when it comes to how much more spread of this in the league, NBA, would it take for him to get to the point of, okay, let's put a month pause in the season or whatever the number might be to kind of get this under control so we don't spread it around even worse than it already is.
Right.
Because one thing you have to keep in mind, obviously, this isn't, it is sort of a responsibility, it sort of isn't. But we also got to keep in mind that these players have to go home to their families too. And obviously, whether they're vaccinated or not, at some point, it's kind of like, the chain reaction. At what point does contact get to somebody who's not vaccinated or is immunocompromised, vaccinated or not? I mean, if you and I got together to do a live episode, okay, obviously I'm unvaccinated, I will still protect myself, but that doesn't mean, you know, you couldn't spread around to somebody else at some point who give it to somebody else, who give it to somebody else, and they give it to that one person that we're talking about, or vice versa on my end. So these players are the same way. So that's at what point do we decide that, hey, for the good of not just the NBA players, let's take the steps, or even just not having any fans in the arena. So is that a better option than just pausing the season? I don't know. Uh, Again, that's probably a money decision there. Is it better to pause the season with no fans as opposed to having games with no fans in the arena? Safety, health and safety wise, says yes. Money wise, probably not.
I also think that there's another reason why that the Biden administration has proposed at-home testing as a way to mitigate some of the spread. You know, people are like, well, we have to, we can't do anything, or we I'm just gonna do whatever because I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I'm like, there's a lot of variance in between those two spaces, and maybe testing's the way for that. I would say these sports leagues are probably in a better position to manage that than any other organization on planet Earth. You know your status, you know who you're around, given you know where these games are happening. They're happening in these arenas or they're happening in practice facilities. Um, you know the players. So ideally, it should be incredibly more manageable than your average non-professional sports team scenario. Doesn't mean you can prevent it entirely. It just means that likelihood for success goes up tenfold.
Look for a future episode when it comes to in-home testing. Um, so I wasn't very familiar with the whole Biden in-home testing proposition or whatever you want to call it. But just the way you mentioned it sounds like it might be pretty interesting when it comes to how to make work in realms outside of professional athletics, or I guess even college athletics as well. So athletics in general. Let's not leave out the high school kids and the youth kids. So, um, but yeah, yeah. I wish I could remember the name of the doctor they're talking about. I was listening to the radio show this morning on Sirius XM advertisement, but they were saying that some NFL doctor or some doctor works closely with the NFL supposedly said that there's no evidence, quote unquote, that players competing against each other is what causes or increases the spread of this. Now he didn't say that there is that he didn't say that it doesn't. He just said there's no evidence of it. So which I find pretty interesting. But did you know, Terrence, there as of right now, that the Cleveland Browns, who's one of the teams that had their games rescheduled, have 19 players currently in the NFL health and safety protocols. 19.
How many?
19, 1 9.
And this team, and what team is this?
The Cleveland Browns.
Well, that's very Cleveland of them.
Right. I mean, I just bring that up because that's, it's a 52 man roster, whatever the number is, 51, 52. So that's essentially more than a third of their team. So I say that all that to say that even though this one doctor says there's no evidence that it does, which I'm not a medical expert, so I'm not going to judge that too much. But, well, I guess I kind of am. But when one team has that many people in the health and safety protocol list, now obviously, hopefully those individuals and everybody else on this list with the contact tracing, they can figure out, okay, who else is in danger, potentially test them or whatever. But still, you know, I don't know. So I just find it funny that they're not doing any. I just find it funny that they do it. Their option for the NFL league is to do less testing. That to me doesn't make any sense. So from a health and safety perspective, putting that out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes our first segment on COVID protocols being updated around multiple sports leagues. Coming up next, in segment 2, we're going to be talking about the rising cost of food at your grocery store. Coming up next on Cowpart Bros.